This is Smokin Jamgrass. I'm Brian.
I'm Jolie, and we'd like to share with you the music we love, progressive bluegrass, and its roots. First and third Sundays of the month from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on KMUZ.
You and I headed straight into the west.
Hello.
Hi, Peter Rowan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? This is Jolie with Smokin Jamgrass, and Brian is here as well.
Hi, Peter.
All right.
Hey. Hey.
The man, the myth, the legendary Peter Rowan is our very special guest. Today is part one of our two-part series.
So saddle up and stay tuned for the ride as we take a journey with Peter Rowan here on Smokin Jamgrass. Next.
Across the rolling hills I come riding. Across the rolling hills I come riding. Across the rolling hills I ramble where I will. Across the rolling hills I come riding. With my banner in the wind I come riding. With my banner in the wind I come riding. With my banner in the wind I'm come and gone again. Across the rolling hills I come riding. Riding my zingle on the mandolin, yeah. Sing a song of freedom when I'm riding. I sing a song of freedom when I'm riding. I sing a song of freedom for every living being. Across the rolling hills I come riding. On my wind horse at sunrise I come in the sky. Across the rolling hills I come riding. Let me give it a try. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
We got the Peter Rowan Bluegrass Band here on Smokin Jamgrass on KMUZ. We just heard Across the Rolling Hills, recorded live from Telluride Bluegrass Festival, June 16th, 2016. Yeah. And that track's off of his 2010 album, Legacy.
We're just getting started as we welcome to the show the musician, the artist, the writer, Peter Rowan. Whoa. Part 1 of 2 today on Smokin Jamgrass. Well, it sure is a pleasure and a privilege to get you on the phone here on our little show.
Well, it's all my pleasure. You know, I like to catch up with folks to see what's going on around the country.
Yeah, you've been super busy. What's going on these days for you?
Oh, well, I'm busy in that I'm trying to finish writing a little memoir of the era in my life when I finally left home and just went for the music. Oh. About 12 years of a bunch of bands, and all the way from Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, and then Earth Opera with David Grisman, C Train back with Richard Green, the fiddle player from the Bluegrass Boys, and then of course the Old and in the Way, and Mule Skinner, which is like it's the 50th year of both Old and in the Way and Mule Skinner and Doc Watson's 100th birthday, all happening at this year.
Yes.
Wow, that is such a rich history. What kinds of things are you pulling? What kind of nuggets can you tell us about what you're writing?
Well, everybody always wants to know why a New Englander like me would go south, and that's been an exploration on my part, because I lived it, but I never thought about it, Yeah. So it's kind of I've dug into my own, like, what were my motivations? And, I guess from the very beginning, I bridled at authority's heavy hand, and New England is, especially for somebody growing up in the 50s, Boston and the areas around there, they were very, they're very law-abiding, put it that way. They played by a rule book that was, that's all they knew.
Yeah, it's not your style, really.
Puritanical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it felt repressive for many reasons, and kind of dark. I mean, that's, I in my research, I got into the Salem witch trials and why only, a few miles from where I live, what was going on with this witch trials. It turned out that the slaves, the Caribbean slaves and, household help of the colonial era, most of them came from the Caribbean, and there's a document about that they had the banjo at that time, and that was the main instrument of their celebrations. And the colonial Europeans, or English, basically allowed them to have their jubilees, they were called, or their there was another name they had for them, and in the Caribbean they had those celebrations every year, where they basically it was a matter of trust between the slave owners and the slaves to, let the slaves be the bosses for 24 hours. Oh. It's symbolically, in that was like during the holidays, like Christmas. So symbolically, that was or carnival, that type of thing, where the Lord of Misrule and all that, was done with theatrics and a kind of a way to allow a certain amount of acknowledgement that that people were all equal, and that they were not all slaves to the system of slavery, but that slavery was just part of a picture that they found themselves in. And I mean, I don't think it was whitewashed that much. I've been in the libraries in Kingston, Jamaica, and they document it down there that there were these jubilees, and there's another name for them, something like jollities or something. But it was on the holidays that happened, and they continue that up in New England.
Nice.
And when they stopped doing that, and they stopped allowing the black folks to gather, the slaves, in public and celebrate, it suddenly became very repressive for society in general, because once you say no, you can't do that, then it's easy to say no, you can't do that either.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, and all these New Englanders were, I mean, they were afraid of the woods. You know, there's Indians out there that were actually marauding and attacking and stealing their cattle and whatever, and so the colonists they got fearful, and you know, one oppression leads to another, and then they had this outbreak of hysteria, which they called witchcraft, where young girls who had been basically their mammies had been black slaves. And they were raised by, you know, black help or black slaves. And they weren't all the same either, you know. But they point out this in this book about the banjo. The banjo was banned.
Wow.
And in a way, you know, it's like it's so horrible poetic justice. But when they banned the banjo in Salem, that's when people started seeing witches everywhere. You know,
wow.
You know, and sure, the banjo and the fiddle playing a certain style of music was called the devil's music. It's like you weren't allowed to play in like a bluesy key, a minor fast key, because that would be like, you know, an Italian tarantella where Lord knows what's going to be loosed from that musical thing, you know. But just the, you know, in researching a book, you read all this stuff, you know, that's related, even distantly related.
Yes.
And I think that's the suppression of black culture, or slave culture, really, in New England led to hysteria of fear and repression. And they're very isolated, those people up around Salem, you know, back in the 1600s. And the winters were long. That was during a time of a small ice age.
Right.
So, I mean, you were having like huge long winters and no celebrations. The fiddle was banned as the devil's instrument. The banjo was banned as the devil's instrument. And, you know, suddenly it's all about witches and spells. And, you know, so why did a New Englander like me flee that to go south to where it was still segregated? You know, that's one of the questions people ask me. And so that's part of the book is kind of like, it's a little bit of a theme, but not one that, it doesn't necessarily take center stage all the time. It's just you could call it a leitmotif, you know, a leitmotif of, you know, because it was pointed out to me actually by somebody. He said, well, you left to replace the sin of repression of New England. You left that original, you know, don't do that place, and you went and worked for a guy who had never said anything like do that. He just said don't do that.
Yeah.
Bill Monroe.
Yes.
Bill Monroe. He only said what he didn't like. He very rare with his compliments. But you know, it's still, you know, it's a curious situation to go from one. You know, the people who played bluegrass were on the periphery of the folk scene in New England. And the folk scene had liberal leanings, but liberal sort of values that were what was valued was toleration and anti-segregation and all that. And you know, to go down south where the music was alive, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was, funny enough, was where the music was most vibrant, both the blues and the bluegrass. And I had to look at that as a theme in the book too, of, you know, how toleration it creates. You know, well, for the black people, tolerate their ability to tolerate their situation as, you know, African people brought over here as forced labor and slavery. Their ability to tolerate brought them to enlightenment, where kindness and the Holy Spirit and religion was foremost in their culture. And of course in the white culture it was too, but the white culture was the master culture. It was the master, you know, it was like the boss. It was the boss culture, you know. And for me to come down there and be part of it, like it was a big social movement of the time, anti-segregation, you know. And in fact, while I was in Nashville, the Fisk University choir skipped their final exams and renamed themselves as the Freedom Singers, and they went down to Montgomery and Selma.
Wow.
And that's where all that singing came from. They were actually from Nashville. And, so it's like discovering this web of stuff that I was living through, but it was all coincidentally happening, on different. And now, looking back from this point, I can see that my bluegrass days with Bill Monroe were, a springboard for inspiration and songwriting and many other things. But I did feel a little bit weird that the South, you couldn't avoid it. Everywhere you went, there were colored only signs and white only, mostly having to do with public health, like restrooms and drinking fountains and things like that. Yeah. But the people that I knew were not covertly, but or even overtly, just part of how things were. But to be friendly with with whoever you came in contact with, that was the basic rule. Mm-hmm. It was, toleration was just part of the situation. It wasn't like intolerance only. It was a system that had been in place for a long time, and both sides, black and white, were. It wasn't like tolerating each other. I use the word toleration because it was intolerable, but to make an intolerable situation livable required, they weren't stepping on eggshells. People gathered and talked and everything. It's just society was segregated. The blacks lived in one part of town and the whites lived everywhere else.
Yes.
Yeah. So, that was part of one of the things the book made me look at again. And, mostly it's about music and why the music was reaching me and how I thought it could be something that I might do, because I've been in school reading about poets and, listening to music, and suddenly it dawns on you, hey, this is a life that can be lived.
The Walls of Time, this is a new number now, and we never recorded, and we will in time to come, and I hope you'll enjoy it. The Walls of Time. Take her to that home on high.
tombstone. I promise you before you die, our love will bloom forever, darling. When we rest side by side, Lord, send the angel for my darling and take her to that home on high. I'll wait my time out here on earth, love, and come to you when I die.
Speaking of the old father of bluegrass, Mr. Bill Monroe of the Ancient Tones, I'd like to do one of his numbers. It's on the record on Carter Stanley's Eyes. This is called Can't You Hear Me Calling? My days are dark, my little darling, since you've left me all alone. I miss you so, my little darling. I wear it so since you've been gone. Sweetheart of mine, can't you hear me calling? A million times I've loved you best. I mistreated you, Lord, and I'm sorry. Come back to me is my request. Remember, dear, the night we parted. A big mistake had caused it all. If you return, sunshine will follow. To stay away will be my fault. Sweetheart of mine, can't you hear me calling? A million times I've loved you best. I mistreated you, Lord, and I'm sorry. Come back to me is my request. My days are dark, my little darling. Oh, how I need your sweet embrace. When I awoke, the sun was shining. When I looked up, I saw your face. Sweetheart of mine, can't you hear me calling? A million times I've loved you best. I mistreated you, Lord, and I'm sorry. Come back to me is my request.
Smokin Jamgrass on KMUZ. Can't You Hear Me Calling? That's Peter Rowan. It's a song by Bill Monroe and his Bluegrass Boys. They recorded it in March of 1950, and Peter Rowan did his version of that song on his 2018 album, Carter Stanley's Eyes.
Yeah, it's a mix of the Carter family and Ralph Stanley. Pretty good.
And, of course, the old standby before that, Walls of Time, actually a rare recording of Bill Monroe and his Bluegrass Boys. Rowan's last gig, in fact, as a Bluegrass Boy. That was recorded in March of 1967 in Baltimore, Maryland. And Bill Monroe was there, Peter Rowan, Richard Green, Lamar Greer, and James Monroe. I can't believe how good that sounded.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. We got a recording of the last gig that Peter plays with them.
Peter Rowan is with us on the phone today. He's one of the last and greatest of Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys, and he's seen it all. Right, Peter?
You know, bluegrass itself is a great metaphor for tolerance of how different cultures had intermingled, and especially in the music of Bill Monroe. And you'd have to always look at Bill as the man who saw the connections. You know, he was partly musically raised by a black man named Arnold Schultz, who played guitar with his uncle Penn.
Yes.
And used to when Bill's parents had gone, Uncle Penn took him on and raised him. And Bill talked about going out there riding on the back of a mule to a dance, you know, and he was like 8 years old, and how a dance. I wasn't afraid to ask him questions because, you know, most people felt Bill was like a non-communicative person, just kind of like aloof and a little bit bitter about other people's commercial success. It wasn't the case at all. He was just sort of pinned in that position by people who thought that having the theme song for the Beverly Hillbillies was something Bill would, you know, Bill had his own successes. He had Elvis Presley recording Blue Moon of Kentucky.
Yes.
Amazing.
You know,
Right.
You know, he never felt jealous. He might have felt a little bit overlooked by commercial interests, but that was his own thing. He never wanted to go in that direction. Every time he did, it sounded awful. I mean, or not awful, but you know, there are recordings of Bill with, you know, organ and glockenspiel, and you know, I mean, it's people he knew who were trying to put him in a setting that was interesting, and some of it worked and some of it wasn't so successful. So he always, and I know what he felt, and it's what I have felt, and most people who try to keep going on, keep on with it is that, yeah, well, that was a nice try, you know, and I went with somebody else's idea of how it should sound, and now I'm going to go back to the way I think it should sound. It's like Willie Nelson said, he never could get any. I mean, his songs were done by other people,
yes,
but he could get no recognition in Nashville as a performer or a player until he started playing his own guitar solos. I read him; he said that as soon as he started playing his own guitar solos, people started flocking to hear him, you know, because it was honest.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so I think Bill felt that if he could do it his way, it would be good.
Yes.
And he was very protective of his way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was open to your questioning as a young up-and-coming musician, huh?
Well, yeah. And when I talked to him about, like, where he first heard the blues and this and that, and, you know, and then he had D. Ford Bailey playing harmonica in his band on the road. Playing Panamanian blues and Fox Chase, all that harmonica stuff. Bill, he was a musical entrepreneur. I mean, he knew how to put a show on. He had a tent show.
Yes.
And they used to drive around the country in these big old, you know, 18-wheelers of the day, and they carried their own grandstand. They carried the tent.
Wow.
Yeah, there are photographs of those tents up and the line of people around the block, you know. Yeah. So and even the very young Ray Charles traveled with Bill on one of those shows.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And they carried his piano in one of the trucks.
Wow.
They took it out every night, and you know, It was like in the barnstorming days of bluegrass. But before I joined, there had been this drought, which was when Elvis Presley hit all the commercial music that used to be putting the bluegrass records out and getting them on the charts. All went for an electric kind of honky tonk country. There was some successes, but there were also, like, when I joined in the early '60s, there was a lot of, because I'm brothers with all musicians. I know how it is for them, but I would think the attempt at commercializing a lot of the individuality of the time, like Elvis, ended up there a lot of schlock, a lot of stuff that was just too contrived to sound, to have that fire. And even Elvis had left the fire behind. With a man with a voice like that, he was easy to exploit because he was a great singer and he loved to sing.
Did you ever meet Elvis?
I never met Elvis. No, I never did. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, the closest I got was seeing Chuck Berry live when I was 14.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he came out on stage in his green tuxedo and his black string tie and that big old blonde Gibson guitar, and he said, "This is my foolishness suit," and he strummed the opening chorus to School Days.
Nice.
And the joint just rocked.
Yeah.
Melinda, sweet Melinda, sweet Melinda, sweet Melinda. Now, now, Melinda, come on, Melinda, now, now, Melinda, I'm gonna get you home, yeah, sweet Melinda.
You're listening to Smokin Jamgrass on KMUZ Community Radio.
Yeah, here we go. Shady Grove.
It's Smokin Jamgrass on KMUZ. We just heard Peter Rowan along with his good buddy Tony Rice and Old Red himself Tim O'Brien covering Shady Grove from November 13th, 2010 in Fisher, Texas. And before that we had the studio cut of Sweet Melinda back from his album Texican Badman from 1980. And backing up that track was David Dog Grisman, Jerry Garcia, John Kahn, and Bill Kreutzmann.
So all those guys together, did they call themselves something back then?
They called themselves the best band that ever was made. It was just on Peter Rowan's album, under his name.
Peter Rowan, who is on the phone with us, he's played with everyone.
Yes.
What a journey from Bill Monroe to then C-Train. Was that when you wrote Panama Red with C-Train?
Yeah, after I left C-Train. I had written some other stuff. No, I brought Panama Red to C-Train. No, it was after Earth Opera that I wrote Panama Red. Yeah. It was actually in the summer of Woodstock.
Uh-huh.
And it was after that I journeyed west again to join up with a fiddler from Bill Monroe's band, Richard Green, and be in C-Train.
C-Train released their second album in 1970. It was after Peter Rowan joined the band on vocals and on guitar. And this song is also recorded by another band later on by the actual person who wrote the song. This version is called I'm Willin'. We're talking with Peter Rowan today on Smokin Jamgrass here on KMUZ.
In every headlight, oh Alice, Alice, Alice. I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari, I had to beat it down a Paul. I've driven every kind of truck that's ever been made. I even rode the back road so I wouldn't get weighed. If you give me weed, whites, and wine, show me a sign and I'll be willing on moving, yeah. I've been kicked by the wind, driven by the sea, had my head stoved in, but I'm still on my feet and I'm still, yes, I'm still. I smuggled smoke from Mexico, I get baked by the sun every time I go to Mexico. Yes, I'm willing. I've been from Tucson to Mexicali, I had to beat it down a ball. I've driven every kind of rig that's ever been made. I even rode the back one so I wouldn't get weighed. If you give me weed, whites, and wine, show me a sign and I'll be willing to keep on moving, 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 yeah. Tucson to Mexicali, to had to beat it down a ball. I've driven every kind of rig that's ever been made. I even rode the back road so I wouldn't get weighed. If you give me weed, whites, and wine, show me a sign and I'll be willing to keep on moving. Yeah.
Smokin Jamgrass on KMUZ. That wasn't Smokin Jamgrass. I admit it right now.
Whoa.
But it was Peter Rowan in one of his many eclectic bands, C Train, doing I'm a Willin', which was, of course, a song covered by Little Feat, written by the very talented George Lowell of Little Feat. It's weird that C Train recorded that before Little Feat. I'm not certain how that all happened.
It's bluegrass with a wah-wah pedal.
And it was produced by the same dude who produced the Beatles, George Martin.
Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky after, 5.5 decades of so many different styles of music to have Peter Rowan joining us on Smokin Jamgrass. Does it seem like a long time ago, Peter?
The thing is, time moves very quickly, and especially when you're working a lot. A year goes by and you kind of wonder what you've done. And so much of music is just the great moments of. There's something about performing that you get a lot of attention, and that attention is energy, and you can go beyond your own limitations in terms of giving back to the audience.
Yes,
that's an interesting phenomenon, one which I've never really been able to figure out, and so it's addicting, So after several years on the road. With C Train, and also remember back then there were the major record companies, and so they had money, to pay back to pay back what a budget costs out of 10% of royalties was your job, but their job was to distribute the records. So after they sold 1,000 records, they'd already paid back their first $10,000. But they were charging it against your 10% of that, so you had paid back maybe $100 for 1,000 records.
Wow!
At 10 cents a record. The formulation was basically musicians were just good workers, But the risk and the reward too was higher, because if you did get a hit, the more money got invested into, improving the overall approach to the musical scene. I mean, we never had a bus, but well, it's hard. I'm hedging because it's a whole subject that I don't want to really get into.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
On that note, we're going to end it right there.
And then next time, we're going to have part 2 of our Peter Rowan interview. We are so pleased that Peter Rowan has chosen to join us.
Yeah, definitely tune in next time as we delve deeper into his huge catalog of music and what he's getting into nowadays.
Including Bluegrass, the next generation.
Yeah, all the young kids that he's helping pass the torch down, dude. 3 generations below him.
But we're going to still play one more song here to end off this show. We started out the show, if you remember, with Across the Rolling Hills.
Yeah, and we're going to end it with the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
Let's bust out some more rock and roll on this bluegrass show.
It's Old and in the Way and some wild horses to ride off into the sunset with today.
Get it.
decided to show me the same. No sweeping exits out of stage life could make me feel better or treat you unkind.
Smokin Jamgrass on KMUZ, that's Wild Horses, a Rolling Stones song covered by Old and in the Way back on November 4th in 1973 at Cal State College in Sonoma. Peter Rowan, David Grisman, Jerry Garcia,
John Kahn, and Vassar Clements.
Yes.
Good job. Vassar.
So again, stay tuned. Next show, we're going to have more Peter Rowan in an interview. And in the meantime, thanks to KMUZ for putting us on the air.
Oh, yeah.
Smokin Jamgrass would not be here without the likes of community radio, KMUZ, in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. If you would like to make a donation, please do feel free to go to kmuz.org. And remember, none of us get paid, but we all get the love.
Yeah, it's all about the free music and the free love and spreading the knowledge. And thank you so much for everybody down there keeping us on the airways. And thank you for your donations. We really appreciate it.
So stay safe. Be happy.
Yeah, everyone be kind out there. Take care of each other. And until next episode, much love.
You and I headed straight into the west. Sun is rising behind. We're headed straight into the darkness. And it's been so long since I've seen you, but I'm forced to stare at these lines while you're tossing, turning, and dreaming. No, I love you, give you peace of mind.